What's up and welcome back. I'm John Sargent, MyTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to try to talk about Blink. I'm going to try to do it not in the 45-minute review that I did the first time. I have a lot of thoughts on this. This is a Nat Geo documentary from Disney Plus. And I think at the first time I was worried that this film was qualifying for the Oscars. It appears this is not on the short list. Thank God. Um, I've been relieved of that, which makes my life so much easier. But I'll start off by saying, yes, it does have audio description. The audio description here is amazing. Thank you so much to International Digital Center, Liz Gutman, Chipari Banks, and Jamie Lemchek for providing excellent audio description to this film. I'm also aware of the fact that this film screened in real life without audio description, which is baffling to me and goes to highlight everything I'm about to talk about, because this is the Free Willy of documentaries. And anybody who ever likes Blink, you don't know what it is you're actually liking. And you don't know why it is that you like it, and you have no idea that you're just being manipulated. It gave me so much pause at how I look at documentaries and people using other people's stories. And it's like, are we using it in a meaningful way? And I compared it to other documentaries this year, and I got into that. And I'm going to try to do that not in 45 minutes. So first of all, Blink is a documentary about parents who find out that they have 4 kids. They didn't find that out. They knew it. That was a weird way. But of their 4 kids, 3 of them are developing a congenital, not, they're losing their vision. They have a disease, that retinal pigmentosis, that is causing them to slowly lose their vision. And they're all young. So it's like 3 little kids who are all losing their vision. And what mommy and daddy have decided to do is create a bucket list of things for them to see. And so this film is about them traveling the world on this budget, and doing all these things. Of course, the initial criticism, which is criticism that sighted people easily make, is not everybody would be able to do this, because financially it's really hard to stop everything for a year and travel the world with 4 children, which is something they briefly addressed in the film, that he worked for a company and they sold the stock, and it gave them latitude to do this for a year on supposedly a $200 a day budget. And do a bucket list for kids. So that's loosely the film. I don't have a problem necessarily with these parents. I'm a little concerned about their future, just simply because this documentary doesn't really address anything having to do with what these kids' futures may look like. It's just sort of like this bleak. I'm assuming they die at the end of this, because that's kind of what the film treats it like. And I'll explain that a little bit. That sounds really harsh, but this will all make sense. You just have to stay with this. You clicked on a thing that says Blind Film Critic Reviews Blink. This is why you're here, is to hear the perspective from an actual blind person. So she talks about how she looked at like medical journals. Great. Did you talk to a blind person? She also says she doesn't know any blind people. I don't know that she actually did the real research, the real groundwork. There's something about like reading a bunch of books and then actually talking to the people. It's sort of like when you learn Spanish, but you don't know conversational Spanish, and you can't talk to anybody, and everything that you say is weird. And Spanish people look at you and you're like, what? You're trying to use Castilian Spanish in like Central and South America, and they just look at you and like, I think we know what you're saying. Oh, you're one of those weird white people that learned Castilian Spanish and you're trying to bring it down here. No, there's a difference. So sometimes you have to, if you really want to do the work, you actually have to do the work. You can't just rely on Google. So what do you think of when you think of bucket list? What is the word that comes to mind? Death. When people create bucket lists, it's always like things to do before I die. Well, they've created a bucket list of kids. Why? They're losing their vision. So they're losing their vision is like death. They're equating it to death. This is basically like a make-a-wish for these kids, which is also death. They basically ask these kids, what are the things you want to do before you die? But they're not actually dying. They're just losing their vision. So the question you need to ask yourself beyond that is, why is it that you feel that these kids are dying? Why is it that we are treating this like death? Because if these were three kids who were losing their hearing, do you think there would be a documentary about them traveling the world so they can hear a whole bunch of different things? No. But why is that? And the reason lies in a lot of the reasons why I'm a blind film critic and why I'm here to talk about audio description and accessibility. And it has everything to do with the fact that a lot of times we are not well supported. The world is not created for blind people. However, it could be if we actually are willing to talk about what it is that these kids will need moving forward. This film isn't willing to talk about that. This film isn't willing to do the work. I compare it this year to other films that are disability oriented. There was For Love and Life on Amazon, which focuses on a former congressman who finds out that he has ALS. And he realizes what that means for himself and what his future looks like. And he does the work to advocate for himself, for his future, not just living in the current. It doesn't just focus on what he's currently doing, but it's all advocating for the future to try to make a better future for himself and for his wife, who is standing by him throughout this whole process. That's the love part of that documentary. There's also Patrice the movie, which also focuses on a disabled couple, and it shows them living their life and they're quite happy. And you can do that, and Blink can do that. Blink can show you this family being happy, but it also shows you the realistic struggles that they face on a day-to-day basis. And one of the biggest struggles, the focus of the movie, is the fact that these two people want to get married, but they can't, because if they get married, they would lose their disability. Which is insane when you actually say that out loud, that two disabled people getting married to each other, two people who are on disability getting married to each other, would suddenly cause them to lose their disability. So, and it's something that they rely upon because they're both disabled. So, it directly talks about, and then it also talks about sort of the before too. So while Blink, we don't get to see a whole lot of these kids before they learn about their blindness. Actually, none. I think that's just footage of them running around the house, like before they leave on the trip. It's funny how your thought is, I'm going to do this, let's call a camera crew. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's document it on film. But for Patrice, it feels like, Patrice just has a story that's being told and that resonates. And same thing with For Love and Life. So this documentary is just, I call it the Free Willy documentaries because I think when people watch Free Willy, it made them feel really good when Keiko, I think it was his name, jumped the rocks at the end, and the Jason James Richter was standing there with his hand in the air. He's like, "Yeah, go Willy!" And then they made like 2 more movies with Willy. Willy was never free. There's a Free Willy 2 and a Free Willy 3. How free is Willy? But supposedly this was supposed to bring light onto these killer whales living in tanks. Guess what continued to happen? Killer whales continue to live in tanks. Guess what's still happening? Killer whales live in tanks. Free Willy had nothing to say, meant nothing, said nothing, and did nothing, but it made everybody feel like that they were like joining some sort of social change, even though they weren't. It was just bullshit entertainment produced by a major studio to make you feel good. And you felt like you were part of some sort of like activist movement. There was a Michael Jackson song that was attached to that movie. And everybody was like inspired, it's an inspirational movie, but it didn't do anything. The whales are still in tanks. Blackfish, I mean, if Free Willy had enacted change, Blackfish wouldn't exist, as a documentary. At least Blackfish got people out of the water. Blackfish addressed a specific problem, targeted it, and got people out of the water. So that way, even though there are still shows, even though you go to SeaWorld and you see the killer whales in the tanks, at least nobody's swimming with them anymore. So that's what's changed. It's a small change, but it's the kind of thing that if Blink had talked about something, we could have moved the line somewhere forward, but it doesn't talk about anything. It doesn't ever present you with the question of why is it that we treat it like it's death? Why is it that we're looking at this like this is the end of everything? Like, this is something that needs a bucket list. Like, this is something that uh, you know, you're asking your kids what their make-a-wish moments are to ride on the back of a camel while drinking a juice box. You know, um, it's Disney and Nat Geo are using these little kids to milk your emotions, and they're doing it. And Disney is not providing accessibility universally for blind people, but they're willing to use it to try to get an Oscar nomination. They're willing to use these three little kids to try to get themselves into awards consideration, but they don't want to do the work themselves. Their Oscar qualifying documentary Sugarcane, which is also available on Disney Plus, which did make the documentary shortlist, does not have audio description. Fun fact. And that's a Disney Nat Geo documentary, but Disney does not support the blind community enough to make consistent enough audio description, but they're willing to use it for their story for Blink. That's the reality. That's why it feels like death, is because we need documentaries that point out the real problems behind it, why you think it's the end of everything, why you think it's the end of time. Because if we had better accessibility, if some of the devices that have been developed, if some of the technology, somebody sent me a thing for technology the other day, and they're like, oh, do you see this? I was like, yeah, that's like $5,000. I don't know if you know that. But I don't have that kind of money. You know, and everybody's so worried about people gaming the system and disability, and like, so disability doesn't, you don't really get a lot of money on disability. It's not something that people are not getting disability and, like, they're out there and they're like buying mansions. They're like, oh man, I got my disability check, I'm gonna go on that cruise finally, just with the check I got just from January. It's not realistic at all. But because of people are not familiar with accessibility they don't have to use. So this could have been something that familiarized people on some level with accessibility, because if you're going to watch a film about three little kids and use their adorableness to manipulate something, then use it in a way that is like, oh, by the way, do you know that shortly they're going to be doing this and they're going to be doing this, and it's going to be hard for them because of this, and wouldn't it be nice if they had this, wouldn't it be nice if we developed this kind of technology, or address the privilege of being able to travel around the world, but nobody else can do that, and how that money could have maybe better been used to buy them the kind of accessibility technology that they will need moving forward. There's no real talk of a realization that these kids will be walking with canes. There's the one kid that talks about how excited he is to maybe get a dog, and the other one's like, I want to get a cat. Do they have when you go blind, you get cat, like a dog? And he's like, well, I want to get a cat. So they address that a little bit, but they address it from the perspective that a child, that is the thing they would be excited about, is thinking that this means I get a dog now, but not understanding anything about why or what that training goes through, and what it looks like for a human to go through that. It's funny because Disney also has that show Pick of the Litter, which shows sort of how those little pups are chosen, and how they go through finding a seeing eye dog. But there isn't like a documentary that connects maybe like these kids, like a sequel, Blink 2, where these little kids get their guide dogs, and it shows you the process of what that looks like. There's so many ways that you could productively help the blind community instead of using three little kids as a chance at Oscar bait, which is what this is. Disney has released so many things this year that don't have accessibility, and they've released it for kids too. Sugarcane arguably is for adults. It's on Disney Plus, but it's for adults. And it's Disney and Nat Geo. It's the same thing as Blink. It doesn't have audio description, neither does Fly. However, Endurance does. So they're like 50-50. But Disney has released multiple kids shows this year. Ariel Jr. does not have audio description. Zombies, the animated zombie show, didn't have audio description. The Big City Greens movie, when it landed on Disney Plus, didn't have audio description. There's one more. I was thinking of that does not have audio. Oh, the second season of Monsters at Work doesn't have audio description. So they they're creating new content. It's always problematic when you create new content and you don't put audio description on it. Netflix, at least seemingly for all of its English language content, doesn't create anything without putting any new stuff without putting audio description on it. Yeah, it has a lot of stuff that's coming from its international catalog that it could put audio description on, and it has library content that it could do a better job of seeking out existing audio description, but it's not creating new content without audio description that was originally created in the English language, but Disney is. So Disney is using blind kids to give an air of, look, don't we care about accessibility? Don't we care about blind people? No, you don't. Your platform is atrocious. Debut, which is the platform that critics use, or actually literally anybody, probably anybody, the whole FYC platform, I have to have a sighted person because I can't get it to accept the terms and conditions. Like, it won't recognize when I go through and click on the boxes to accept. It won't recognize that, so I have to have a sighted person tap on the stuff for me so I can get through to the next page. And then when I get there, of course, guess what's not on the platform? I'll give you one guess. Audio description. And the audacity to believe that there's nobody who's any of these guilds who might be blind or low vision, who's voting for anything. Like, if you're having to create it, put it on there and send it out because somebody might benefit from it. Why? Why not? What do you lose? By providing accessibility, especially for titles that already have created accessibility. What do you lose by providing it? If anything, you look more inclusive for people who are aware of that kind of need out there in the world. When they see that it's there, when they see closed captioning, when they see audio description attached to screeners, then they know that you've made a commitment to accessibility. When it's not there, it just makes you look like, well, we don't think through things very well. So I don't like Blink because it really, I think it's just making people feel like, oh, well, this is really sad. This is happening to those kids, but without any understanding of why. And this is coming from somebody who also was not congenitally blind. I did lose my vision, and I'm very grateful for everything that I did see because it gives me so much context moving forward. It's one of the reasons that makes me a strong advocate for audio description, is because it's like, I've walked in your shoes, sighted people of the world. I know what it is to walk into a movie theater and to just walk into a movie without having to give any thought of it. I know what it's like to just hop in a car and drive to a movie theater and not have to think about any of your accessibility needs. But now I'm on this side, and I'm trying to convince people who have all of the power to start thinking about accessibility they don't need. And it's really tough. But I would rather, in the meantime, that they not use my disability to try to win an Oscar. So that would be great. And especially do it vicariously through Three Little Children. So I'm not a fan of Blink. I'm not going to grade the film because I feel like the grade would be really unfair. And I don't have ill will against the family that's featured here. Definitely don't hate the little kids. Like, they're adorable. And I wish them the best moving forward. And I think the parents, but I do think somebody here was manipulated, and the grade would be more applied to the director of the film and also, Nat Geo and Disney for using my disability to try to win awards without doing the work. So do the work first, and then you can come around and try to use blindness as the hitch to win an Oscar. But I'm kind of glad this died and is not on the Oscar shortlist. So anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.